Hello, everyone. Today with me, I have two amazing contributors to SarielDB, and we'll be talking to them and understanding their journey with SarielDB. What is some things that they're excited about in future? And yeah, it's going to be a great chat. Hi, Atharva. Hi, Rafael. How are you folks doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are
Good,
you?
yeah. It's very exciting being here.
Absolutely. It's SarielDB World Day, and we're all excited to know the next features that are coming up. I'd like to start with you, Atharva. You just finished your master's from King's
That is
College
correct.
London, and you're also a backend developer. What else is happening in life, and what are you currently working on?
I just finished my master's, as said, correctly by Prateem. And right now I'm trying to find a job somewhere in the industry with the job market. But yeah, parallelly, I've been working in as open source contributor in several repos. But SerialDB has been the most, contributed thing I've ever done.
That's interesting. We'll be talking more about your contribution to SarielDB. Why did you start contributing? What was the things that you found interesting? But I first want to get to Rafael. Hi, Rafael. You're going to Oxford pretty soon, and the whole team is really excited for you. You're also working as an intern with SarielDB, and just tell us more about how's life.
Yeah, so I've been working as an intern at SerialDB over the summer and doing lots of exciting projects, and that has been an interesting position for me because I hadn't worked very much in open source before, or anything nearly as big. So I'm both now working on my own projects and having the experience of people trying to contribute to what things I've done, and then also contributing to SerialDB itself. So it's been a very interesting experience, and I'm really excited to be doing studying computer science soon.
Yeah, that too at Oxford, pretty fancy. Um, uh, about you, Atharva, you were one of the folks who have contributed to the Go library of SarielDB, and how tell us about how did you come across SarielDB, and why did you think you need to contribute to it?
Well, if I'm really being honest, I was learning Golang for about 2 months previously, and I was stuck in the tutorial hell. So I was like, okay, I need to move on. I have to do something more. And I was just randomly searching through GitHub and some external websites, which give good first issues easily. So that's when I came across SerialDB. And at first, I was a bit. I was really struggling with how to read the code because I was new to language as well. But I really found that entire concept of SerialDB interesting, and it was very light and quick to set up in your
Yeah.
system. And that's how I was like, let's try with this.
Definitely. With SarielDB, there are multiple SDKs that are available, and all of them are open to contribution. And Golang is one of those SDKs which has had a lot of interaction and contributions from the community. I wouldn't be wrong to say if 90% and more of the driver has been built by the community itself, and it's also being managed by the community. It's been a great way of interacting and learning things. We have more contributors who aren't present here, but it's a good. I'm going to give a shout out to them. Thank you so much for contributing to the Golang driver and other drivers also. But coming back to you also, Rafael, tell us about that one project that just blew your mind in terms of when you decided to work on SarielDB.
Well, I don't know. The big project that I've been working on has been the Discord bot, which allows you to use SerialDB on the Discord server. Really easy way, and the idea is it's for troubleshooting, but also the easiest way, I think, to just try writing some SerialQL. And one thing that I found is that it's a sort of maybe slightly unusual use case, and there were some things that I needed features that I needed in the Rust SDK that weren't there originally, and that was a really interesting experience. This big project and trying to understand how it worked, and I think that's a very valuable experience to try and understand that and then actually get changes made to it.
If I'm not wrong, the most interesting part of your journey is also the how you've now transitioned from contributing to maintaining the code base and a lot of contributions that are coming in. Tell us something more about it. How does it?
Yeah, so in the Discord bot repo, I sort of made the main code, and then one of the most very active community member called Ali, and she has made quite a few PRs and we're working on stuff, and so it's quite interesting to be from the other perspective of looking at code that I've written and what somebody else is doing. And it's actually quite a weird experience because it's sort of, this is my thing, I understand how it works, and then parts of it I haven't, written every line, character of it anymore. But it's also so helpful because she has experiences and knows how to do things that I don't, because she has different experiences. And so I think that's one of the amazing things about open source, is it can bring people together, and you can get this the best bits. Yeah, but it's also quite it's a strange experience giving that kind of thing up and bringing other code in, and you have to be careful because sort of I think about something in some ways, and somebody else will obviously think of it something differently, and so you have to be careful with that, because that's where bugs come in.
Absolutely. Again, coming to the same topic, Atharva, you mentioned that CyrilDB has been one of your major contributions, and you were looking for good first new issues. How did you start with contributing to open source, and what are some issues what were some steps where you found out things were a bit tricky and you had to figure out things by yourself?
Right. So why CyrilDB was the best thing I ever did, because it was not just understanding the code base of Golang. I also had to look into the Rust language as well. And I have no clue about Rust, but it was just understanding how Rust works so that I can talk to that particular API using Golang. So that is something which was a bit of a struggle at the first, but I soon picked it up pretty well. And yeah, that's how it started.
Did you have any help from the community, or?
Oh, yes. So I've been constantly bugging a lot of people on Discord server, and I hope that they responded to me, and they did very well. And I received a lot of help from Hugh and Misha, and they have been very pivotal in my understanding of how open source works and how even the Golang library works.
Absolutely. I think one of the best things about contributing to open source overall is the support that you get from the community. And even if at some point you don't connect with the engineers internally, there's always someone else who has contributed to the product, who has gone through the same issue, who is available to help you out. And Rafael, tell us one interesting thing that you are currently working on, and why are you so bubbly and excited about it?
Well, my current project is Surreal Singles, which is a dating app, which is basically I was thinking about all the new features that SurialDB has, and you've all heard in the keynote about some of those. And I was thinking of a use case that we could show those. And so basically the idea is that we can combine vector search, ML, the indexing, live queries, basically combine them all together in this app. So I'm fleshing that out at the moment. And I think that would be a really interesting showcase. And I hope that if that can stand as something that then people can look at as, I want to do this thing. Well, here's an example of it doing, because I think that those kind of examples are really critical. And I think especially on the Discord, I've tried, I haven't done very much contribution before, but just trying to use projects. Often you have like random channels or maybe even Discord servers, and you ask a question, it's like a week later nobody's responded, or somebody asks you a question, you reply, and then you never hear from them again. And both the people in SurialDB, like Misha, Hugh, and Toby, and there's so many people, but in the community as well who know so much about the code and have used it, and are building things on it. I mean, Jules and Surrealist is an amazing project, and I think having that example is so valuable. And I think it's a really great place because there's so many different aspects of it. I mean, obviously the database, and like if you're doing the database core and the live queries and stuff, that's really difficult. But there's so many different parts of it that you can look at, and I think it's a really great place to start.
It is. So if anyone is not having any luck with any of the dating apps, you know who to ping. Rafael is very much active on Discord, so please get all the help. And also Rafael is going to be on the live coding booth after some time, and you can definitely reach out to him.
Yeah, if you go to the demo corner for people here.
that's there. Atharva, I want to understand from you, how are things gonna move ahead from here for your personal journey, and how has contributing to open source you think will help you going ahead?
And the one thing that I've noticed very prominently is that when you, even if you don't contribute to a project, but if you just read through the code, understand it, and you try to contribute, you eventually become a good developer, since those projects are on production level and they have good code base to refer to. So that's how you also have your own self understanding that, okay, this what I had done was incorrect, this is something how you should progress. So that's how I, at least for me, is what will help me become a good developer, by doing all these projects.
Absolutely. And another thing which I personally learned when I started contributing to open source is learning to collaborate with a lot of people writing code at the same time, and building the patience, understanding their perspective, being open to different ways of doing things. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's like how you maintain your calm, basically.
Yes.
But so yeah, I mean, at times you're like, okay, this is right, what I'm doing is right, and but the other guy is saying something else which is not correct. Maybe it is correct, but you don't understand that it is correct. So just trying to have that patience and understand what's right and wrong, and consulting other people on that part as well, is something that you learn when you collaborate in in random Discord server.
Absolutely. It's not important for you or as a person to be a maintainer of an open source project for you to review the code, right? Like, you can still go ahead and review it as a person who's just normally a part of the project. And even the reviewing process helps you understand what was their mindset when they wrote that piece of code. And that's also another great way to just learn to be a better engineer, I feel.
I think one of the big problems that I've always found is that you start programming, you have your hello worlds, you have your basic CRUD applications, you have all of these really beginner tutorials, and then you kind of run out, and then you have like academic papers and books and stuff on advanced stuff, and often it's difficult in that middle stuff, and I think that's where open source really shines, because especially if you have a really supportive community, because you can look through code, you can see those examples, and you can reach out. Obviously, there's a reputation around some projects of not being so helpful, but I do think looking through the code, I think it is a pretty invaluable resource.
It is also very important that the project that you're contributing to is a project that you either genuinely like, have spent time, or have some curiosity towards, and are not contributing just for the sake of contributing. That's when things start going down the hill, and your contributions are not as helpful as they could be. And what do you think, Atharva, about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true. I mean, when you start contributing to a project, it might be that you're just doing it for the sake of it. But eventually, when you delve into the code and understand what the product is, you might start liking it, or might not. It depends on your taste. But when you start liking it, you get into it rather more deeply than just scratching on the surface, and you dig in all the code and just understand what's happening. And that's what's good for the developer as well.
Absolutely. I have just one last question for the two of you, and then we will wrap it up. But how did you go through the code base? Like, how did you... SarilDB is a big code base. And when you decided, okay, I'm going to contribute, I think Golang driver is the driver that I wanted to contribute to. What was the first steps you took? And like, some tips, if you have, for folks who are contributing to open source for the first time, how should they start with just reading through the code base?
Right. So the way I did it was, I picked up a particular good first issue, and I was like, okay, this is my issue, now I have to do something. So what I did was, of course I cloned the code and everything, but I looked through the code which looked similar to what has been already done. And first of all, I tried to understand the syntax of it, or rather semantics of it, and what variables should be named how and everything. And then I traced it backward. Like, if I want to get to this point, I have to do X, Y, Z, and I started from Z and then went to X again. So you don't necessarily have to go through the entire code, but eventually we'll have to.
Yeah.
I think because my what I was doing in SerialDB itself was on the Rust SDK. And so my general approach is I look at the API surface, and wherever you start, some function you're interested in, go through that function, and then you just, like recursively, you look through every function. You call this function, what does that do? What does that do? What does that do? And I think that's generally a good approach. I think it's difficult with SerialDB because of how it functions internally, and that doesn't really work. And I think there's something that we could do to improve that and be more resources. That basically, because you have sort of the engine here, and then you have your connection here, and then you have channels and users message passing. So that means that there's that kind of leap which is unintuitive because you're not just directly calling functions. But I think that generally is sort of, once you bridge that, you can follow those things. And I think that's a pretty good strategy, and you can feel out the logic. Though in something big, it can get a bit overwhelming. But I think there's, I feel like that might be something where hopefully we'll be improving and coming out with more guides and walkthroughs of how the code base actually works.
Definitely. We have a lot of tutorials coming up, example apps coming up, which will help the community understand how they can build SerialDB with different use cases. And my last question is to you, Atharva and Rafael. What are you two folks most excited about when it comes to the next thing that you're going to build with SerialDB?
I'm not really sure what I'm excited about, but today morning we heard about ML and all that AI stuff, and that definitely is something which has never been there before in a database. So that might be something that I would explore and just understand how it works.
That's amazing. What about you, Rafael?
I think that, and the kind of stuff that I'm looking into now, is that SerialQL is an amazingly powerful tool. And it always feels weird to me that, like, you take stuff out of a database, you do it, you put it in, you take it out, and there's a sort of extra lag and whatever, both in terms of like actual performance, but also mentally, because you're converting back and forth between these models and you have serialization. And so being able to do that logic inside the database, I think is really helpful. And you don't want to do everything inside the database, but especially when we can leverage Rust with things like the ML and have it run at native performance, I think is a really powerful tool. And with things like events and functions, and especially with WebAssembly, there's a lot of really neat things you can do putting interesting logic in the database.
Well, I think that was it, folks. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. And for everyone who wants to contribute to SerialDB, we have our own GitHub repository where you can contribute. You can also reach out to us on our Discord and other social media platforms. And yeah, have a great day. And it was nice talking to you folks.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.